Believe me when I tell you, owning a Ford Flex is absolutely dreadful. Hey everybody, Anton from GT Canada here, and today I'm going to tell you about my experience with my Ford Flex. Now, some of you have watched some of the videos that I've made on how to repair the Ford Flex, specifically the front end, so you know that I've owned one. Now I'm going to tell you why I will never own one again and what I hate about my Flex. So my journey with my Ford Flex started many years ago in 2009 when I first saw the first Ford Flex. And I really liked what I saw. Now, I am known by my friends and my peers as not a Ford guy. I don't know if I'm necessarily a Chevy guy, but I do tend to find myself owning more Chevys than any other vehicle. If I'm labeling myself, I would call myself a Nissan or an Infiniti guy because I do prefer Nissans for certain things. But in my life right now, with the family size that I have and the needs that I have for being able to tow and whatever, a Chevy SUV or truck has always seemed to do the job for me. Oh, so go back to 2009, and a coworker of mine who was very much a Ford guy. He was Ford till he dies, and I'm gonna tag him in this video, so if you're watching this, you can comment and tell everybody, yep, I'm a Ford guy. Now, he won't tell you this, but I think he's got a Ford logo tattooed on his butt or something. Like, everything for him was Ford. Ford was life. So when he came home with a brand new Ford Flex, I was like, wow, actually, that's a Ford that I could appreciate because I love station wagons. And the Ford Flex to me was just a giant boxy station wagon. And for whatever reason, nobody wants to call the station wagons, so I think they count it as a SUV, even though it's a station wagon. It looked cool. And inside, the features were cool, the layout was cool, the seating setup was cool, the fact that it could be 7 passengers was cool. It was all cool. The utility of it was great. You could fold the back seats down, you got tons of storage, it has a decent engine, get it in an EcoBoost, which makes power and is fast, it's all-wheel drive. If you really get aggressive on the gas pedal and turn the traction control off, you can get it to slide and have great fun. So with all these great things going for it, why do I hate it so much? Well, I think I hate the fact that the one I bought was not a high mile one. So I bought it used. Sure, I didn't buy it new. So it's now 2019 is when I bought it. So it was 10 years old. It just had problems right from when I bought it. It was snowing out and I'm driving it home. When I stepped on the gas, the weight would kind of shift back. And when it shifted back, the wheel would, I'd have to counter steer to go straight. And then when I stopped accelerating, the weight came back onto the front wheels and it would pull hard. I wasn't sure if it was the snow on the ground, I was sliding, or if something was up with the car. I later found out that I had a bad front wheel bearing that was so bad, in fact, the wheel was like dangling there. The lower ball joint was really bad, which would have helped contribute to that. Control arm had a bad bushing, so I replaced all of those. You've seen my videos, you've seen I've replaced all that. Well, a month later, I'm getting the same problem again. I go back in and I look at it, and now the bearing's failing again. So I just changed the bearing again. And then a month later, it's doing it again. So I check it, and the lower ball joint's gone again. So do I just have really bad luck with Fords? Or Am I just getting inferior parts? The parts are made in China, but what parts are not made in China anymore? How do you find non-China parts? And maybe that's where that commercial for only use Ford parts on your Ford vehicle come from, because they know that all the other ones are trash. They were trash, and I was finding myself replacing parts. Had this awful clunking noise that I could not find the problem for. I couldn't find the reason for the clunking noise. I replaced the sway bar bushings. I replaced the sway bar end links. That was a lot of it, and it went away after I did that, and then it came back again. And then I replaced the struts, which a lot of people, that's one of my most popular videos right now, is how to replace the struts on a Ford Flex. Why is that? Because everyone's got crappy struts on their Ford Flex. So I did that, and then I still have clunks, and then the things come loose, and then the car has a mind of its own, and it on the highway it still makes weird creaking noises. And you know, this isn't just an experience of a fool trying to drive an old car and expect something that it shouldn't give you, because I only drive old vehicles. So why should I think that my Chevy doesn't do that? Very rarely does it do that. My Flex had just over 200,000 kilometers when I got it, which is about 120,000 miles. That's not a lot of miles by my standards. I frequently have taken vehicles over 300,000 kilometers. So that's 180,000 miles. And my sister, who tends, I don't know if she's a Ford person either, but she tends to end up in more Fords than Chevys. She always said how much she loves her Fords. And when I jumped in the Ford that she swore she loved, I drove it, things didn't work. It had low miles. It was 160,000 kilometers, which is about 100,000 miles, and the speedo didn't work. The shift indicator didn't work. So when you put it into drive, you didn't know you were in drive because it stopped at neutral. So you had to just thump it down into gear rather than pull it into gear, just because you have no idea what gear you're in. There was weird rattles that it made, and I only drove it a block, and I couldn't wait to get out of that thing. And I told her, I said, you know, I've got a theory that Ford vehicles feel great when they're new, and when they start getting some miles on them, they fail faster, and they seem to fail with more severe problems that fail. So on that Ford Flex, I had totally rebuilt the whole front end. And I didn't mind. I was like, whatever, you know, it's an old car, it needs maintenance. I got it for a good price, and whatever. Well, then we ended up picking up what I refer to as the GT Canada headquarters, which is a lake property where we've got an RV set up. And so I needed to take stuff up there to get it set up. So I've got a flat deck trailer, and so I just loaded up the flat deck trailer and I hooked it up to the Ford Flex. Well, the Ford Flex is rated at 4,500 pounds for towing. My trailer and all the stuff on it was not 4,500 pounds, so I was good, right? The car did okay towing it, but it was certainly not happy, and that poor little 3.5 engine was having a hard time getting up some of the hills. So I decided I'd do it a favor and pick up a truck. So you can argue with me all you want. I now have a Chevy Avalanche, and I know you're saying, Anton, you are a fool. You didn't buy a truck. You bought a hairdresser's car, or whatever you want to call it. Well, I've had an Avalanche before. I enjoyed the Avalanche. It does what I need to do. I'm not going to defend my Avalanche to internet strangers, but I'm going to tell you that the Avalanche has been up to the task that I needed to put it to, which is helping bring stuff up to get the lake lot set up. On my last drive home in that Flex, something came loose on the front end, and I still don't know what it is. And the car was all over the road, and it felt dangerously squirrely on the highway. It just kept wanting to pull randomly to the left, similar to what it did when I very first bought it, and the bearing and the ball joint were bad. And I hope that the ball joint's not bad for a third time, because what are the chances that 3 ball joints are bad? Like, those chances are small. I'm thinking that there is an engineering issue with the Ford Flex, specifically for the front end, and nobody wants to talk about it. They just sell them before they admit it. So now I've got it for sale. And I was always like, you know what, it's no big deal. I got a smoking deal on my Flex. And when I look around in the used car market, people are asking a small fortune for their Flex. And so I was like, okay, well, I can sell mine for half of what people are asking for them, and I'll still at least get my money back out. So I didn't mind throwing parts at it and everything. Boy, was I wrong. There is absolutely zero demand for a used Ford Flex. Now maybe just nobody wants a white all-wheel drive Ford Flex with low kilometers and sweet looking black factory rims. Maybe, right? Maybe nobody wants that. But who in the right mind wouldn't want that? It looks so sweet. And when you look at it sitting there, and I've got pictures up right now, look at that picture. That is a sweet looking car. Who wouldn't want to buy that? And yet nobody does. So I think that Ford Flex owners are a little bit crazy and a little bit unique. They love their car, so they buy it and they keep it and they'll never sell it, and they make you feel like there's this demand for this car because those people specifically want that car. And I was one of those people. And to this day, I still love how a Ford Flex looks when it's sitting there. And if I only had to drive it for a weekend, I'd probably still love a Ford Flex. But I just don't like the fact that things seem to keep breaking on it. Now, back to my friend or my co-worker's Ford Flex that he had. He had a 2009 brand new off-the-lot Ford Flex. He only owned it a month, and he had it back in the dealership for a problem that he was having. He never told me what the problem was, but he had it in for the problem. They gave him a loaner car, and that's why I was asking him, hey, why do you got that car? What happened to the Flex? Oh, it's in the shop. Oh, okay. Another month or two later, he's got a loaner car again. Hey, where's the Ford Flex? It's in the shop again. And he says, and I'm getting really sick and tired of all the problems I'm having with this car. So in the back of my mind right now, while I'm owning this car, I'm like, I'm having problems with this car. He had problems with the car when it was brand new. So in the end, he actually had a third problem with the car early on in his ownership. And he went to the dealership and said, I don't want this trash. And he made them give it back or take it back. And he got a different new Ford, right? And swore off of Flexes. A Ford guy, a sworn in, tattooed Ford guy turned his back on a Ford Flex. So that should have been an indicator to me that I should just not listen. It's kind of like when you have an opportunity to date a supermodel and you hear about how supermodels are horrible to date because they're just so superficial and blah, 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 but you don't care because she's a supermodel. So you start dating this girl, and next thing you know, she doesn't clean up after herself. She makes a disgusting mess around the house. She doesn't cook. So you're stuck eating out all the time. You waste all your money at McDonald's because this girl doesn't even know how to cook anything. After a while, it doesn't matter that she's a supermodel anymore, that she's hot, that all of your friends are like, oh, you're so lucky you're dating a supermodel, right? You're like, oh, it's so awful. Let me tell you how awful it is to date a supermodel. Believe me when I tell you, owning a Ford Flex is absolutely dreadful. And if you own one now, I'm sorry. You should sell it before it lights on fire and or kills your family. Because that's the future of a Ford Flex. They are awful. Speaking of Ford Flex, I'm about to pass one driving down the road that looks just like mine. Just looking at his face, I can tell he's not enjoying life. He's contemplating driving his car into the guardrail just to end it all right now, end his misery. So I'm glad I got out of that thing before I got to that point. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this segment of GT Canada Car Stories. And if you like the video, make sure to like and comment below, subscribe to our channel, and we got a lot of great content coming up, and we got a lot of great content already available. So go ahead and check that out. I promise all of my stories are not a rant about how awful the car is. It's just having a Ford Flex was quite awful, and I'm glad that that's over with.